Test. Test.
Test.
Okay, good evening, everybody who is here in person this evening and also joining us online. We've got a little bit of echo here, so we're going to fix that momentarily. We good to go? Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Sims. I'm the Chief of the Culver City Police Department. Again, welcome to our military equipment use policy meeting this evening. I'm joined this evening by Lieutenant Ryan Thompson, Assistant Chief Troy Dunlap. I have Sergeant Eddie Bascaron here with us. And then also Jeanette, our administrative assistant, is here to help us with our WebEx this evening. Tonight, we're going to go through the military equipment report that we are required to produce and present to the community on an annual basis. You will hear a detailed description of the report with some background information related to this law and how it pertains to our police department and the things that are required of us after the passage of this law. And so the way that this evening is going to work is we'll go through the report, which should take about 15 minutes or so, and that'll be presented by Lieutenant Ryan Thompson. And then afterward, we will open it up for questions from folks who are both here in person and online. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Ryan Thompson. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As the chief mentioned, my name's Lieutenant Ryan Thompson. So a little bit of background on the military equipment laws. In September of 2021, Governor Newsom signed into law Assembly Bill 481, which codified Government Code Sections 7070 through 7075. Assembly Bill 481 requires a law enforcement agency to obtain approval from the applicable governing body, in our case, our city council, for law enforcement funding, acquiring, and using equipment deemed military equipment as defined in the bill. The term military equipment does not necessarily indicate the equipment has been used by or acquired through the military. None of the equipment in the police department's inventory has been obtained from the military, nor is it solely designed for military use. Last year on September 12th, 2022, City Council adopted an ordinance which not only approved the use of our existing military equipment inventory, but approved our military equipment proposed department policy. This year on August 28th, 2023, the police department posted on its website various social media platforms and GovDelivery information about the meeting we're holding here tonight. The purpose of the meeting is to receive community input on our current and future use of military equipment. So what we're going to kind of be discussing is the compliance requirements, which include approval of military use policy, the approval of police acquisition and use of military equipment ordinance, the annual meeting, our current military equipment inventory, as well as our annual report. So in the annual report, which was again posted online, it includes a summary of military equipment use, a summary of complaints and concerns, the results of our internal audits, costs associated with military equipment, quantities for each type of military equipment, and additional equipment requests. So again, this is kind of an overview of what we included in the annual report. Starting with the top, we had 9 drone deployments. All of those drone deployments were used to search for felony suspects. We had 2 instances of chemical agents being deployed. Both those chemical agent deployments were used to de-escalate incidents involving felony suspects. We had 3 uses of our mobile command center. And again, it's not a military tank or anything like it. It's simply a 30-foot trailer. One of those deployments involved an armed barricaded suspect, while the other 2 involved community events. Both of those events were our National Night Out as well as our La Bayona Festival. We had 15 deployments with 1 incident of a discharge involving the rifle. All of those rifle deployments involved armed, dangerous, and/or felony suspects. And of our less lethal deployments, we had 4 that included directing and 1 incident of discharge. All of those deployments involved armed, dangerous, and/or felony suspects. As far as the less lethal deployments go, those involved our 40mm launchers. 40mm launchers allow our officers to no longer get in close proximity of their subject. They reduce the risk not only to the police officer, but also reduces the potential for a physical altercation where use of deadly force becomes necessary. Next slide. So the summary of complaints and violations. The police department did not receive any complaints concerning military equipment. No violations of police personnel unlawfully deploying or discharging military equipment were found within our internal audits. And again, this is required in Government Code Section 7070. The total annual cost for the police department as it pertains to the military equipment included replacing one of our existing drones. That cost was $1,343. And as far as the next budget cycle goes, we do not intend on purchasing any new equipment besides replacing ammunition that is used for training and firearms qualifications. I believe at this time we will open it up for questions, both in person and with attendees online.
Thank you, Lieutenant Thompson. I'd also like to just remind folks again who are joining us on WebEx that if you're interested in asking a question, do we want them to raise their hand? Please raise your hand in the WebEx and we will give you the opportunity to ask your questions. Also, for those of you joining us online, if you'd like to follow along and take a look at our annual report, you can do so by going to our website, culvercitypd.org. And you will find our annual report there and also more information on our military use policy and that equipment. For those of you who are joining us here this evening, we do have hard copies of that information in the back on the tables. So with that, we are opening it up to questions. Did you have a question? Yes. Oh, we're going to bring a mic. I'm sorry. For the folks who are joining us online.
Okay, my question concerns the drone, the use of the drone equipment. Can you tell us something about the types of incidents and what the outcomes were like? I'm sure it was a very satisfactory outcome and a safer outcome, but is there anything you can share with us about that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So if I'm not mistaken, each of the incidents that were described in the presentation that you saw are briefly summarized in the military equipment use report that you can find at the back of the room. And again, you can find it online at culvercitypd.org. But just in general, per our policy, the only types of things that we can utilize the drone for is to search for felony or dangerous suspects and things of that nature. So those are the types of incidents. We can also use them if we're going to be serving a search warrant on a residence or a location. For safety purposes, we'll launch the drone to hover above the location before we serve that search warrant. But again, those are the types of incidents that we utilize our drones for. Absolutely. Okay, we have a question from somebody online.
It's Nancy
Nancy
Barba.
Barba, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Nancy Barba, and I'm curious if you can share with the public where, not in Culver City, but were those drones deployed in Culver City alone or in other jurisdictions? And also, what was the outcome of those drone deployments?
Nancy, I'm sorry. Can you start from the beginning? You weren't clear from out here.
Sure. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Regarding the drone deployments, were those all done in Culver City or in other jurisdictions? If you can share with us kind of how those deployments break out, and also what were the outcomes of those drone deployments?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Nancy. I can tell you that there were 9 total drone deployments. 4 of those deployments were outside of the city. And again, we oftentimes utilize our drones to assist with incidents that do occur outside the city. That may be for some type of, for example, vehicle pursuit that ends outside of the city, which is often the case. And then we set up a perimeter and now we were searching for the suspect. We utilize our drones to help us locate those dangerous suspects. And then again, when we're serving a search warrant, which is oftentimes outside of Culver City, we will utilize our drones to help us do that in a safer and more efficient way. In terms of a summary of each of the incidents, you can find those in our use report, which is going to be on our website at culvercitypd.org. Yeah, so we don't have any information on the outcomes for each one of those cases. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Jones. I organize with Culver City Action Network, and we have been following this report since it was released, and kind of look into more of the context around a lot of this. One of the, I guess, one of the strangest things about looking at this report and looking at the policy is that you guys have 123 carbine rifles. You have only 103 cops, and that's more than one carbine rifle per cop, and which on its own is kind of strange. Then you look at the actual uses of this, and the last year you only used them 16 times. When you look at the uses themselves, they're, execution of a search warrant. Are you going to get all 103 cops taking all 123 rifles to execution of a search warrant? Or are there going to be 123 search warrants you need to do in a day? I mean, you only used it 16 times over that year. So, I'm thinking about like the potential, I guess, what we've seen other police departments use that kind of arsenal for is like if there's a protest and you send out all your cops to the protest to meet protesters, for example. Maybe you would need that many guns in that situation. But that's not an approved use in the policy. It's like your policy says, let me get to the page. I think it's for deadly threats only. And specifically, it gives examples like active shooter and hostage situations. But again, we go back to the report and you see execution of a search warrant. You see a lot of these where it's who was believed to be armed, which I can understand sometimes you don't know, but your record is pretty bad here. It appears only one of these is where people was actually armed. So one of them says unarmed burglary suspect. It actually doesn't say that he was armed. He was suspected of being armed there, but I assume that one, because you didn't write believed to be armed, that in that case he actually was armed. Anyway, that's 1 out of 16, which to me is an awful record of if we're supposed to be trusting you to assess what is and isn't a deadly threat, it seems like you have no clue. Usually you think these people are deadly. It could just be someone who's a suspect. They're unarmed, and you're pulling this carbine rifle on them. Just had their sidearms pulled out. One of the officers, at least in the video, maybe there were other officers, but one officer in the video has his carbine rifle, and he fired twice into a man's back, a man who was unarmed, a man who was experiencing a mental health crisis. This man was a father of 3. His kids went to CCUSD, and he died. And this is consistent with research that shows that militarization of police is associated with higher killings by police officers. Now, Culver City is an interesting case because since 2018, the only gun-related killings in the city have been by police officers. So in other words, anyone who's been killed by a gun in Culver City since 2018, the person who killed them was a police officer. Was a police officer.
Can I just interrupt you because that's actually not true? We had a murder earlier this year by a firearm in the parking lot of the 7-Eleven at Washington and La Cienega. So
Okay.
just to correct you on that.
So I'm sorry, that was outdated. Okay. So I will correct that and say 75% of the killings have been by police officers. Which is, I don't know, abhorrent, is out of place with, I think nationwide it's 1 out of 20, which itself is really scary. But in Culver City, it's 1 out of 4. And, it just seems so disproportionate to be, these weapons that are meant to be more accurate, ammo that's meant to provide greater cavitation inside people's bodies so that it causes more pain and is more likely to kill them. And I don't see how this is making us safer. You know, none of these were hostage situations. None of these were like, why aren't we limiting their use to these things? Why are they being used on people who are unarmed? It doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I mean, there's the cost of the program. There's a lot that's wrong with it. Anyone who wants more information, please go to culvercityaction.com. Sign up for our newsletter. We're going to be sending out more information before the city council meeting on this, because people don't know this information, and they need to know it. And there's a lot that's not in this report. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the question and comments. Just to discuss a couple of things that you mentioned. So we have 109 sworn police officers. I believe you said 103. Is a little bit off. Okay. And so we issue, just like we do our handguns, we issue our officers their patrol rifles. And so that's why we have over 100 patrol rifles, is that so we're able to issue each officer their patrol rifle. They keep that rifle. They're in charge of taking care of that rifle. We find that it's a better way to ensure that the rifles are better cared for. And our officers, then they take their patrol rifles out with them when they work patrol, and they keep those patrol rifles in their cars. Okay, and so each officer again is assigned a rifle, which to your point is why we have so many of them, again, because we have 109 police officers. And I did want to mention, because I didn't in the beginning, that this same report, as you mentioned, thank you for mentioning that, will be presented to the city council as is required by law. We are required to present this usage report, military equipment usage report, both in a community meeting and also to our governing body, which is our city council, annually. And we will be doing that on October 9th. So I encourage anybody who's interested in attending that meeting to be there on the 9th, or tune in on WebEx. And again, you can find more information about this topic at culvercitypd.org. And I'd also like to just briefly mention, because I think it's important, although I'm not able to comment on incidents when there's pending litigation. Anybody who's interested in seeing more information and learning more about the shooting that Mr. Jones referred to earlier, I would encourage you to please visit our website, culvercitypd.org, and view the critical incident video related to that incident. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak again. I'd like to address some of the comments made by Mr. Jones. I don't know you, Mr. Jones, so obviously nothing I say is meant to be taken personally. But just as a glass can be half full, some people can see it as half empty. When I look at this report as an attorney, a criminal attorney, I'm very gratified and reassured. We should be very thankful that weapons were not used. There was no need to use them for a hostage situation or other very serious situations. Not that the report doesn't contain serious situations, but that these weapons and these pieces of equipment were not needed and were not used. I think that shows a tremendous amount of restraint on the part of CCPD. And I hope that it continues like that. It's like an insurance policy. You hope you never have to use it unless there's a crisis. And again, I'm really impressed and I'm very gratified by what I'm seeing here. We're not clairvoyant, none of us in this room. So when an officer responds to a scene, he or she does not know what they're going to be met with. So you would agree with me, I'm sure, that they need to look for the facts. They need to use their judgment, but sometimes they only have a split second to do that. And they can only do that properly if they're prepared, if they're trained, and if they have the right equipment.
Thank you for that comment. And a couple of things that I was reminded of. First off, anytime we deploy our rifles in the field and direct them at people, those incidents are reported. To a supervisor, they're investigated, and all of our deployments that we've reported here tonight were found to be within policy, as was mentioned earlier in the evening. And we do that anytime we deploy those, both our patrol rifles and also our handguns. Also related to the drones, if anybody's interested in learning more about our drone usage, including some information on outcomes, please, again, visit our website, culvercitypd.org, and take a look at our quarterly reports. We report all of our drone usage incidents in our quarterly reports, and there is information in there in terms of location, date, time, and then outcomes. Suspect was arrested and a little bit more information. Okay. Sure.
That's exciting. Thank you. If there were drone notifications that we received and they're not in the report, does that mean that you didn't end up deploying the drone? There were 3 that I found: January 7th, February 23rd, and May 20th of this year.
Yeah, so what Mr. Jones is referring to is when we deploy a drone within Culver City, we send out a notification utilizing our public notification system, Nixle, or Everbridge. And for those who have signed up with Nixle, they will receive a notice that, hey, we're going to be launching a drone in this area, which gives people the opportunity to, number one, be aware of that fact if they do see the drone, and then they can leave the area if they don't want to be around that type of activity. So I can't speak to why you have received 3, but what I can say is that there are times when, for safety reasons, we don't believe it's prudent to send out a notice before we launch the drone. So that does happen from time to time. Typically, we do send out that notice, but again, we're only sending out that notice when we utilize the drone within the Culver City boundaries. So if we're utilizing the drone in LA, we're not going to be sending a notice to our Culver City residents that we're utilizing the drone.
So why there were notices on those dates but not in the report is to be determined? I mean, it wouldn't be a situation where they send it out and didn't send a notification. I'm saying it. I got a notification and it wasn't in this report.
Yeah, so if you got a notification that a drone was being utilized, and I'd have to take a look
Sure.
at exactly
Yeah.
the date and time and all of those things to really explain it. But as I said before, there are times when we don't send out those notifications, and then times when we do.
There were also some, and I don't have the dates for you, but some inconsistencies between this report and the quarterly reports on drones. Would there be a reason one would be in one and not the other?
Again, I can't speak to specifics,
Right.
but possibly, did you have any information on that, or?
No.
It could be that a drone was used by another outside agency for an incident. I'm just off the top of my head. Did you have something, Sergeant Bascaron?
Report is up to the mid-year at this point. This report.
Sure. But I mean, I was looking at the ones for,
Okay,
yeah,
so it may not be apples to apples.
maybe I'll probably follow up on that.
Absolutely. Just
and
give
then
us a call.
a couple other questions are, the state law requires, so for example, you mentioned other jurisdictions using drones in Culver City. So state law, well, first of all, would require that to be disclosed in this report, but also you only authorize in the policy other jurisdictions to use armored personnel carriers and ground robots in Culver City, not drones. So any any use of drones by other departments in Culver City would be also a violation of this policy. Now, I know you said there were no violations, but I encourage you, if there were other uses of military equipment in Culver City, first of all, they should be in the report, and second, I would check to see if actually they're covered by the policy, because that would concern me, and something that city council should know before they determine whether to reauthorize.
Gotcha.
That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions online? Anyone? Okay, thank you so much for coming this evening. Truly appreciate it. Thank you for those who joined us online. Again, if you're interested in learning more about any of this stuff, you can please contact us or take a look at our website, culvercitypd.org. Thank you.